Hey vinyl community. I have emerged from the practice room to participate in, I think, the first vinyl tag video I've ever done on this channel. I know they've been going around for a few years, but I wanted to participate because Alan over at Static Traveler had come up with a very interesting vinyl tag list. It's a charmingly whimsical vinyl tag, and Alan is of course a very whimsical guy. He is responsible for those incredibly unnerving and very enjoyable but very creepy whispered puppet shows. If that's your sort of thing, I recommend you go check out his channel. But he had 10 vinyl tag related questions, and I pulled out about 13 records, I think. Why I pulled out 13 records and not 10? Well, it's kind of like whose line is it anyway? The game is made up and the points don't matter, so I pulled the records I wanted to. All of Alan's questions had something to do with fantasy or whimsy or the magical. His first question was, show a record that has something to do with dreams. I picked 2 records. The first record should be immediately recognizable to most classical music listeners, and that is Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique. This particular performance is by Dmitri Mitropoulos in the New York Philharmonic. For those not familiar with Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique, Berlioz was an early 19th century French romantic composer, kind of an eccentric person, and he's most famous for Symphonie Fantastique, which is a kind of themed symphony with a desired written program notes detailing a plot in which a obsessive creative has an opium dream where he imagines a ballerina or opera singer, I can't remember which, that he falls in love with, and he becomes so infatuated with her that he murders her in a crime of passion. He then faces the scaffold, is hung for his crimes, and descends into hell and witnesses a witch's sabbath. Some good opium. Anyway, so this is Symphonie Fantastique. This is a Speaker's Corner reissue of this classic vintage Columbia stereo recording. I grabbed another Dream record because why not? This is an album by the progressive metal band Fallujah. This is Dreamless. And not only does the album title and cover kind of reference dreams a little bit, but I find the music of Fallujah, on the one hand, it's incredibly technical death metal, progressive death metal. But on the other hand, the drums provide a cadence in a way, and the guitars have this kind of spacey, overdriven tone, so that even though the music is incredibly violent and chaotic, it kind of rides on a wave. So it does kind of have a dreamlike effect when you're listening to it. I challenge you, listen to this album and see if it doesn't remind you a little bit of a dreamlike state. The next question was to show a record with dessert, sweets, or cakes or something like that on the cover. And it may be cliche, but the closest thing I had was my vintage Decca stereo pressing of the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed. Now, not everything on this cover is edible. Not every parts of this cake are edible. There's a tire on there with some nails in it. There's what looks like a bit of pizza, an office clock, and the master tapes to this recording. But it looks like there's some cake on top. Number 3, Alan wanted us to show a fantastical item of transport, a spaceship, a rocket, train, boat, something like that. I grabbed one of my go-to records that I've shown, I think, a few times on this channel. It's Boris's album, Smile. And I really like not only does this cover have this metallic sheen to it, it shows kind of a rocket fighter jet kind of in the stratosphere. You can see it superimposes buildings, so the image looks like you're very close to the Earth, but there's also, kind of the limit of the stratosphere out here, and then, I don't know, what is that up above? Is that another shot of the Earth? I don't understand the cover all that well, but it looks really cool. And there's some, what appears to be flames not only shooting out of the tail of the jet, but shooting out of the cockpit. I thought this was a really interesting cover image. Next, we were to show a album cover that had a sort of showcased a fantasy world or a fantastical drawing, something with some fantastical scenery in it. And I picked Oh Brothers' 2011 studio album, Garden Window. This band, I guess, could be classified under the stoner rock label, but they also occupy some elements of post-hardcore and progressive rock. I've seen this band live a few times. They're really, really good. Number 5, we were to show a record to do with outer space. Well, I did go with an obvious choice. Pulse the Planets. This particular recording is with Herbert von Karajan and the Vienna Philharmonic. I have some other recordings of this piece, but I like the cover art on this one the best. So that's the one I went with. It's also a very good recording. This is on a nice Decca 2000 series wideband. I did grab another record for this question because, again, I can and I wanted to. And this is The Heliocentric Worlds of Sun Ra. You could pick a lot of Sun Ra records for this question. I just happen to have this one on hand. His discography is a little intimidating, and I really like the album cover on this. And you can see here he puts himself up with Pythagoras, Copernicus, Galileo, and there is Sun Ra. You know, I heard this, let's say it a rumor. I remember reading somewhere once that Sun Ra once tried to teach a class at one of the UC California schools, not on Afro-American studies, but on Astro-American studies. Because his whole thing was, here's the thing, I don't know if he actually believed this or not, but he always claimed to be from, was it Jupiter or Venus? I don't recall. And I don't know enough about Sun Ra to know if it was part of his persona, his stage persona, or if like he was actually crazy and he thought he was born in outer space. I don't actually know. He was a weird guy that made really interesting music. Number 6, show a TV record, preferably a whimsical or fantastical program. Well, I grabbed 2. One is a compilation soundtrack from the Japanese anime series and film series Neon Genesis Evangelion. This is Evangelion Finally. If you have not seen this show, it's kind of a mindfuck. It's definitely fantastical. It's science fiction. I don't know if I would call it whimsical. That might be a stretch. It does get a little heavy at times. A far less serious and a little bit more whimsical, but not quite as fantastical TV show record that I decided to grab was music from the series FLCL, also known as Fooly Cooly. That's what this anime is called. This is another Japanese anime. This one was around, I think, in the mid-2000s. And pretty much all the music in this series and all the music on this album is music from the Japanese alternative rock band The Pillows. Number 7, show a record with a cartoon on it or just a cartoon cover in general. I decided to, this could be any drawn cover art, really. I decided to pick a 1999 album by the band Number Girl. This is Schoolgirl Distortional Addict. And I love this cover. Number Girl and actually they just started a reunion, so I guess I could say are, a Japanese alternative rock / post-hardcore / grunge band who were active in the late 90s and early 2000s. Pretty similar, I would say, to bands like Sonic Youth or the Pixies or Husker Du. If you like stuff like that, you'll probably like Number Girl. I think this is their best album. And the cover art is the most Japanese thing I've ever seen. It's a schoolgirl with a heavy machine gun strapped to her back, and her classmates all have various types of light arms on them. Very interesting cover art. Number 8, the question was show a record related to childhood. Now, I think the question is kind of open-ended. Is it a record that's, for children or a record that you relate to your childhood? I don't have that many records geared for children or made for children. I do have some records that I associate with childhood and my childhood. One record in particular that I definitely associate with my childhood is this one right here. Petula Clark's Greatest Hits, Volume 1. Funny enough, there is not a Volume 2 of this record. You would think there would be, but there isn't. She has there's a lot of different Greatest Hits albums. This is just the one that I happen to have. I had a Petula Clark cassette when I was I in kindergarten, first grade, something like that. And I would listen to it all the time. And I grew out of it, but, you know, a couple years ago I went back to some of these songs. It was funny because I almost knew them by heart, just because I listened to that cassette so much when I was a little kid. And they're good songs too, you know. They're not songs you can't listen to as an adult. I mean, they were written for adults, I think. But number 9, we're supposed to show a record related to fantasy characters like nymphs, fairies, angels, something of that nature. Well, the one I grabbed was a record containing a composition by Claude Debussy, and it is Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. And you can see here, so this is a piece by Claude Debussy based on a French poem about a mythical faun, and you can see here it was a ballet. Debussy wrote it as a ballet, and it was choreographed originally by the Russian choreographer Vasily Nijinsky. And Nijinsky, I believe this picture is from Nijinsky choreography. It looks like Nijinsky's choreography, but I could be wrong. But what's funny is Debussy hated Nijinsky's choreography of his ballet. He didn't like it at all because the music is very kind of lugubrious and flowing and kind of mythical and misty. It's kind of, even more so than his works like The Sea, it's kind of watery and mysterious. And Nijinsky's choreography for the ballet was almost like an old ancient painting where there's no depth to the painting, like Egyptian hieroglyphics or Greek pottery. And so his choreography was very angular and very almost like they were posing for ancient like wall paintings. And it's a very interesting effect, and I don't have a strong like or dislike of it, but man, Debussy hated it. The last question for Alan was to show a record whimsically related to death, or the morbid or the grotesque or something of that nature. The first one that came to mind was the Scandinavian Gothic classic album, Hymn, Razorblade Romance. I mean, this is just the most gleefully cheesy glorification of the macabre and of death that you can possibly get in a record. It's these, kind of these big goth rock ballads with baritone crooning vocals, and just listen to some of these song names: Poison Girl, Join Me in Death, Right Here in My Arms, Razorblade Kiss, Bury Me Deep Inside Your Heart, Death is in Love with Us, Resurrection, One Last Time. It just doesn't get any better than this for, I think, this topic. So I'm making jest, but I mean this is a beautiful album, and it's probably my favorite Hymn album. So if you ever listen to Hymn, you should give this a shot. They were really popular in like the mid 2000s. I remember going to the mall when I was a kid, and there'd be like Hymn T-shirts and CDs everywhere. But they seem to have fallen off a little bit since then. I don't know why. They're a great band. I did pick one more record for this question, and I went in the opposite direction. I went outside of an elegant portrayal of romantic death to a kind of attempt at humor, but also the gritty, harsh reality and the ugliness of death. And this is actually, so despite the fact what you may see from the cover, I think this is a more serious pick. This is the self-titled album, Cokie the Clown. If you've never seen or heard of this album or Cokie the Clown, basically what you need to know is this is the kind of alter ego of the singer-songwriter Fat Mike from the punk band NoFX. Cokie the Clown is a persona he introduced, I want to say like 8 years ago or so. I actually saw what I believe was the first Cokie the Clown appearance, and that was at South by Southwest. Oh, what year was that? South by Southwest 2013, 2012, 2011, something like that. Maybe 2011. South by Southwest 2011, it might have been. And I caught the end of this set. It was at, for people that are from Austin, it was in that tent right across the street from Emo's. It was like the Emo's Annex, they called it, for South by Southwest. And he was playing this acoustic set. And I just remember the songs were incredibly dark, really fucked up. And he was like telling stories in between the songs, sharing like some incredibly personal, incredibly dark stories from his life. This guy did not have a very pleasant adolescence, and the audience was not having it. I mean, they thought they were there to see, oh yeah, Fat Mike the Joker from NoFX. You know, this funny guy is going to play a bunch of stupid fart jokes and anti-Bush songs. And what they got was this incredibly morose set. And when he came out originally on stage at the show, he came out with a tray that had a bottle of tequila and some shots, and he poured shots from the bottle of tequila and gave it to the audience. So he did that at the start of his set. He played some really sad songs and like got heckled by the audience, and told some really dark stories like about his like friends dying, his mom, like his dad dying, and he didn't go to his funeral. When he was a kid, he like watched a girl get raped, like really messed up stuff. And the audience was just pissed. And then is a kind of final up yours at the end of the set. He wheeled out one of those like school television VCR sets onto the stage and played a cassette tape, or played a VHS tape. And it was a VHS tape of him before the show. Apparently, now I don't know if he really did it, or like if what he gave them was truly what he was showing in the video, but he showed a video of himself taking an empty Patron tequila bottle and urinating in it, and then putting that on the tray. I don't think he actually passed out urine to the audience, but needless to say, the venue was not happy, and I think he was banned for life from Emo's in Austin, Texas, which at that time was a notable venue to be banned from. Now Emo's is a shadow of its former self. But anyway, so I want to say last year or the year before, 2019, he finally released an album as Cokie the Clown. And it's the songs that he kind of workshopped and played at that show I was at South by Southwest. And they're not pretty songs. They're songs about his friends dying, his friends committing suicide, his dad dying, terrible things that he's done in his life, terrible things that people around him have done in their life. It is a kind of, I think, a catharsis for him. And it's a hard album to get through. There's not a lot of musical value on the album. The songs aren't catchy. This, I think, was just essentially a artistic therapy session for Fat Mike to get all this out of his system and off his chest. And I still don't know if I like this or not. I still don't know if I appreciate it the way it was intended or not. But I know that I listened to this on a drive last year, and it made me feel some things. So if you want something incredibly morbid and whimsically kind of disturbed, talking about death, Cokie the Clown. Thank you for coming up with such an interesting and whimsical and fantastical and creative vinyl tag, Alan. I look forward to watching more of your soft-spoken and incredibly disturbing cartoon puppet shows. Until that time, cheers.